Hey guys, now we're moving on to the second half of our course here. If you remember last time we actually created our database connection. When we launched our application, we were able to create our database and we should have our storage.db within our directory now, like so. Oh, and just a quick note, I know I'm moving through this tutorial rather quickly, but feel free to pause and copy down the code. I mainly want to emphasize the logic involved when creating each of the functions for the app. Now let's move on to the next portion. Now since we have our database connection, we'll need the function to actually insert into the database. So I'll go ahead and copy this portion. Paste. Again, feel free to pause whenever I finish pasting. That way you can get everything down. Okay, just to explain what's going on here, this is the submit info function, and what this is going to do is actually run an insert statement onto our database. So I'll go ahead and run our app here. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Oh, and another quick note, I realized I made a slight error at the beginning. Make sure you add these variables here, that way we can read in the data properly. Alright, go back down here. Okay, so the submit info function, what it does is it's going to take values, the input values from our text input widgets. You see we have a name variable, and we're taking the name input text value. For our picture name, we're going to take the value from image URL here. And finally, from the URL, we're going to take from the web link box. Once we have the values, again, we're going to create a connection with our database, open the cursor, and then run an insert statement onto our storage list table. And you see here for the values, we're going to enter the values we picked up before. And finally, once the data is added to our table, we're going to clear all the widgets and run our select all function to add the widgets back to the screen. And this is something that's not done automatically, but once the widgets are added, we want to make sure we clear the text field. So if we have something here, like, put mayo here, google.com. So if we don't have this section here, after we submit our information, we'll still see the same things here, even though it'll add to the database. Go ahead and close this. Alright, we'll save this, and we're not going to run it yet because we still need some more functions added, so we'll go ahead and add the rest of them. The next one on the list is going to be the open URL function. This one's going to be short and sweet. This open URL function is going to link to our button widgets that we've added, just to show you guys what I'm talking about up here. Not there. Here we go. So these buttons here, once we add them, it's going to run the function click on release, it's going to run the open URL function. And once that URL is clicked, it's going to take the value in our table and open that. The value being the actual URL. And these next three functions we're going to add are connected, so I'll go ahead and copy them all. And add them appropriately. Feel free to pause to copy down everything and make sure you have it. Okay, so these three functions here are all to remove data from our database and remove the widgets as well. There are many different ways to go about doing this. This is the simplest way I could think about doing so. Of course, if we plan on improving this in the future, we'd want to wrap this all into one specific function. So I'll go through the first one. The first one is populate delete row. What this does is it takes our delete list global variable up here, and what it does is when we select a label name that's going to be on our app, it's going to add that label name to the delete list. The next thing that it's going to do is it's going to change the color. That way users will know, okay, when I click this name, it's going to highlight as blue and actually let them know, okay, it looks like this is going to be deleted once I click the delete button. That's what this portion does. It's going to change the texture color. And once the texture color is changed, then we're going to run an update on it. Again, these properties are taken from the Kiwi docs, so I suggest you look into them if you're ever curious as far as where I'm getting them from. The next function that we have here is the remove delete object. Kind of similar to the first one, populate delete row. If we select it, we want to be able to unselect it, right? So kind of like a checkbox, what we're going to do is do reverse. If we select one and it's in the delete list and we click that same object, it's going to change the color back to the original color, update the texture, and remove the label name from the delete list. And finally, this last one is the delete row function. And this function is actually going to perform the deletion. So we take our current delete list with however many values we have, set it to a variable of array, connect to our database, open our cursor, and finally loop through every value in the array, And this may be a little bit tricky, but for each value on the array, we want to make sure, in addition to removing the data, we want to remove all the image files associated to it. So assuming we have multiple images here, this is what this portion is going to do. The OS remove tag removes all the images within the image string. And finally, once the images are gone, we execute our delete from storage list for the rest of the items in our array according to the label name. Now, once the items are deleted, kind of similar to our submit info function, we're going to clear all the widgets and run our select all tasks to repopulate the screen. And once that connection is done and closed, we're going to empty out our delete list. That way we can add more information later on. So let's go ahead and save this and run it and see what we have. Okay. Now I know you saw I did have a picture already, so I'll go ahead and just use that. We do have to use the extension, unfortunately, if we want the picture to show up. So I have my image address. I'll go ahead and take my URL. And then just call it car seat. Once we submit, voila, we have our information. Everything pretty much happened in an instant, but just going back here, once we hit that submit button, it took all of our values, added our name to our table, added the URL to our table, and then added the image name to our table as well. Once it took the web link, it added a button that links to it. So if I close this out and click this, it opens back up to the provided URL. Our picture, of course, comes from our image directory, and then our car seat from our list here. And just to show the function of the delete, if we select our name, it's highlighting our label here. So when we click that, it's only running the populate delete row. That means this list object here is set for deletion. And if we click it again, it runs the remove delete object and removes it from that delete list array. Like so. I'm not going to delete this just yet. I'll add one more object here. Let's go ahead and get a stroller. So again, I'll take a picture. Whoops. There we go. Save it to my image, stroller. And then go to copy my URL, go to my app here, paste the URL there, add the stroller.png, and then call it stroller. And voila, it's there. And you can see it's working as expected. Now, to show you the delete function, let's go over here. So, let's select our car seat. So, as I mentioned before, once it highlights blue, then it's set for deletion. And we click our delete button here, it's gone. And it took a second, but our image is gone as well. Now you may be wondering, okay, what happens if we have the same name as well? Well, unfortunately, that's going to be one of the bugs we resolve later on in the future. Let's go ahead and remove this last object here. And there we go. Now let's go ahead and add our last function here. So our last one is really optional, but if you plan on creating this for a friend, for them to use as well, they're going to need instructions on how to use it, right? And this instructions function is going to be open once we click our instructions button on our app. And you can kind of see it's simple here. Again, Kiwi has a pop-up widget, and once that button is clicked, it's going to open that pop-up and display some text information. So just to show you guys that in action, I'll go ahead and save this and rerun our app one more time. And you see our instructions button here. Once I click it, voila. And there we go. Again, I want to thank everyone for participating in the beta trial for the Z-Code Solutions app creation. And just as a closing remarks, as you've noticed, this app is far from completion. There are still numerous ways to break it, including the if you select a label with the same name, you will delete both objects, even if you don't select it. So that can be corrected. It also has a bug where if you hit the submit button, it'll actually add data, in which case if we don't have a label, we can't really delete that as well. And also, since we are using a database, if we plan on hooking this up to a server and putting it on display online, we would like to check for certain insertions and make sure there's no SQL injection attacks. Anyway, if you plan on keeping it for personal use, then feel free to leave the app as it is, make some few improvements on it, and use it for personal use. Again, I want to thank everyone for participating, and I hope you guys tune in for the next app. Thank you. Bye-bye.